And one. Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special returning guest, Alin Silverwood. Alan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Oh, excellent, excellent. It's crazy that it's been 4 years since our first interview together. You were my first interview for this podcast. So,
That's
as
funny.
I was thinking about it the other day, I was like, oh, I haven't talked to Alan in a while on the podcast. I should get him back on. And then I was like, oh my God, that was like 2021. So for me, it felt like the blink of an eye, especially my little one. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
It's
But it
been
was
a
kind of
weird stretch of
serendipitous.
time.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of serendipitous though with your Kickstarter, starting up this upcoming Tuesday. So I think that worked
Yeah.
out really well. So I'm glad that we could reschedule for today and talk about that and reintroduce you to some of our newer fans of the podcast. So I just want to remind people you can go back season one, episode one, Alan Silverwood, where he's going to talk about his SPIs Among Us Kickstarter, which was just absolutely such a cool idea. And I absolutely love the art. So you guys got to make sure you go and check that out. But anyways, Alan, what has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Man. Um, well, let me see. Where did we leave off? I mean, do I want to start over? I think I probably told you. It's like I started writing when I was like 5 years old or something. I was like writing stuff when I was a kid before I even really knew what that was. I didn't know what I was doing. I just, I was watching TV or whatever, reading books, reading whatever I had, and I wanted to tell stories. I had them in my head, so my whole life has been about like I want to tell my own stories. I have things and ideas and stuff. So I've spent an entire lifetime building up all these different ideas I want to develop, and then because of my ADD, I have severe ADD. It's been one of the things that prevented me from actually doing nearly as much as I wanted to. But I did start releasing, I released the first novel in a fantasy series a few years ago, and I've got the second novel like halfway done, and everything is all plotted and ready to go. I just need to actually do the actual finished writing. That's just sitting there. And of course, I've had some health issues over the last few years, pretty much since we talked the first time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And as a result, obviously, a lot of stuff hasn't gotten done. But I kind of went and did this side track into going back into comics. I used to work for Marvel. So I'm like, oh, I wanted to do these comic ideas. And so it's like, well, let me do those because those are really a little easier for me to write in some ways. So I've been working on all that stuff. And it's like now I've got all these things that I had kind of backlogged and I'm trying to get them out now. And there was this one very special thing, and that's a guy in the Altitude Adjusters. It's this steampunk thing that I had that I'd come up with. And I was like, this is the thing that I've got to like really, really make special. It's like, that project of your heart kind of a
Oh,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh well, they all are. They're all your babies, but this was the one that's like, I think this one's special, and it really is. It's the one that deserves, it deserves the attention that I can get it. It deserves all of the effort I can put into it. Um, it's kind of like I think what I've got here is the right mix of characters and a good story and something that people will be interested in. It's like this is what you hope to come out of your writing. And I mean, I feel that way about everything, but there's just something a little bit magical about this particular thing. So I'm like, yeah, but I'm still writing. I'm still writing all of the stuff. I've got several projects going at any given time, and I've been doing some editing for other people. And um, the right for me, writing is kind of like I don't want to say it's a love hate thing because it's not a hate thing. It's never been that. It's been kind of it's a love frustration thing, you know.
I feel
Uh,
that. I feel that.
yeah, you've got like it's like I got it, and when I sit down and I can write, I people used to in my writing groups, people used to just go, like it's like everybody had to turn in a certain story and had to turn in a story at a certain point in time. And I would be the guy that would come in and they would be like, this is so polished. It's like, how many times did you rewrite this? And I'm like, oh, no, I just wrote that yesterday. And they're like, what are you doing? If you
One of
can do
those.
this, if you can do this, the next, it's like it's so polished when your first draft is so polished. If you can do this, why aren't you just putting stuff out? And I'm going because I can't do it until I'm under, a pressure cooker for someone who's expecting it. And it's like, when you're you don't have a publisher, you self-published or whatever. It's like you don't have anybody except yourself that's really sitting there expecting it, or you don't think of it that way. And so it's like, you know, and then you're combating, issues like ADD and things. It's like stuff just doesn't happen the way it should. It doesn't get done timely, and you're like, okay, I've got to defeat this somehow. So I'm like, this is kind of the year that I'm set up with a schedule. I've had a chance to kind of regroup over the last year. I had a job, a writing job for 20 years, steadily writing for Hot Wheels and stuff. And I'm like going, aside from doing my own books, and I've done, I worked for Marvel and did some stuff, and a few things here and there. Like, I had this steady thing. Now I don't have that. I lost that. So it gave me a chance to kind of sit back and go, okay, now how do I how do I reconfigure myself so that I'm like ready for this while I'm moving forward, so that I can make these things happen that I've always wanted to make happen. And I'm like, okay, now I've spent some time getting ready for that, and I've started to do that. I've actually been really crazy busy, and it's surprising. I'm like sitting and going, I am the busiest unemployed guy I know. you know, Aside from trying to find a job, I am like working. I am working hard. I'm like, man, this should look good on my resume. I should be easy. It should be easy for me to find a job. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
here's a
yeah.
guy running his own business and doing all kinds of stuff. And it's like, man, and it's like, and I'm just doing it off the cuff. I'm like, you know, I'm not even taking all the stuff that I've been doing. I was working for a Fortune 500 company, working on a website, doing, stuff that required all my, SEO knowledge and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, I'm not even doing that now. Now I'm kind of just doing like instinctive. It's like, whatever you'd call it, I'm doing what is the natural path for me to follow here,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
what is the conventional, like what wisdom, or the latest trick or anything. It's like, no, what would reach me, what kind of things would reach out and grab me. And I'm like, how do I do that? And I'm trying to just figure out how to do that and find a way to make that work. It's not easy now. They've made things a lot harder. We've talked
Yep.
about this, how
Yeah, yeah.
hard it is now um, to get in front of people. It's not even a matter of like, I'm like, I know people love this stuff. Like, there's no question in my mind, people who will pick this book up are going to really enjoy this. They're going to love these characters. They're going to love the art. They're going to love the book. But if they don't see it, they don't know about it. They don't know about it, then they can't love it. So it's like, how do I get it through to them? And it's like, how do I beat the algorithms? How do I, where do I need to be that people are gonna be, that might even, notice this without all the other noise around it, so that
Yeah.
I can make it, like jump forward at them. And I'm like, so it's like that's the thing that nobody seems to have an answer for. Everybody's got an idea or a concept. Their guys have done whole seminars and make a lot of money trying to tell you all the answers to this stuff. And I'm just going, man, they're all saying something different, or they're all saying the same thing. And it's like, but I'm like, it still seems like kind of a crapshoot. It's like you either make it out there or you don't. In the end, it's like,
Oh, even the
well,
paid ads, even like we talked earlier, like even the paid ads, I talked about that with a lot of people recently. Even the paid ads, it's like it doesn't guarantee,
yeah,
like I know some people are spending. I've met a couple authors privately that I was like, how much are you spending on your paid ads? And a couple of them are in the tech field, right? For
yeah.
indie authors, and they're like, oh, I'm like doing 6 grand like every 6 months. And I'm like, is it working? They're like, nope. I'm like, dang, that's a lot to be spending and not, to even really get out there, compared to what some people have done just with a couple posts on, whatever the social media is.
Yeah,
I think
it really, I don't think it matters that much. I'll do some ads, but it's like I'm not going to spend that much on them. I'll do some ads to see if I can get a little signal boost, and maybe it'll catch a couple people who will share it. They'll go, oh, like, this is something that I know so and so will be interested in. They'll share it. And, maybe it kind of goes out and does a little bit of something over here and gets a little circle over there or whatever. I'm like, that's really the best you could hope for, I think, at this point. And then
it
eventually,
sucks, but
gradually, it takes a, you know,
yeah, it sucks, but it really just comes down to, and it stinks too, because I've heard people they're like, well, you just have to work on your content and just make it the best it can be. And then there was I'm not even getting down. There was a book series I read recently, and I flew through it. I loved it, loved it. And I'm like, why are these the books that are like not out there? Like no, nobody. I was really talking to like knew him. And then I found a couple others that I enjoyed. And one I was like, oh, like how many reviews does this person have? I'm like 13 reviews on audiobook, like 33 on Amazon. I'm like, this is a absolutely amazing tale. I was just it just was astounding to me. But it just showed me, right? Like you could have the best product, and find your audience, but still not find your audience, and
That's
it's
really
still
it.
it's the thing that yeah, it's the thing that counts, keep coming back to, like I know people will do that. They're like, oh yeah, this I'm making it the best I can and then getting it out there. I'm like, but you still have to be able to get it to your audience. And I think it comes down to like I've talked to people for a long time. I'm like, I love cons. I love going and talking to people in
Oh
person,
yeah.
just setting up a table, even at like, we have like those little festivals and stuff in my town. And I'm like, I told my wife before, I was like, I'm just can't wait to just work every single one. Let's just, go out there for one of the days, and just sit out there and sell a stack of books. And, I was like, I still think the salesman in me is the person to person. I enjoy doing the
That's
podcast more, because it's like we could actually like have a conversation, and explain an idea or something like that. But I think it's so hard when you're just seeing it online.
yeah. No, I mean, you can talk to people about it. You can actually say more, and
Yeah,
then they
yeah.
kind of get that personal connection. I am the worst. I am a horrible introvert. To talk, it's like I lose, I get so worried about and self-conscious about myself that like I lose track of what I'm even talking about sometimes.
Mm.
I love going to shows and doing stuff. I've had shows that have gone very well. Like I've sold out stuff that I've taken to shows. And then I've gone to shows where like I can't buy attention. Like I'm like, it's really crazy. It's just a crapshoot. I have no idea what to expect. I like going. I actually do enjoy being pulled out of my shell a little bit. Like I said, it forces you. I mean, if you go to a show and you just sit there, it's on you. So I'll go to a show and I'm like, I've got to find my inner extrovert. It's like, and let them
Yeah,
out. And it's like, see what that looks like. And sometimes I'm like, does that, then I start second guessing myself. How does that look? It's like, is that weird or is that okay? Or, it's like, how is that going to go? But I'm going to, and I usually do pretty well. It's very rare that I have like a negative encounter or anything at a show. I mean, that really doesn't happen. But I haven't done a lot of shows. I've been, with the health issues over the
yeah,
last
yeah.
couple of years, I haven't done any shows in a couple of years. I went to one recently that was local here. They did this local thing, and it turned out to be like people who were only looking for old Marvel and DC. That's it. It's like it was
Hmm.
like nobody had any interest in any indie anything, you
Okay.
know.
So,
There were a few toys there that people were into, and it's like I'm going, that's it. It's like, but if you were just like an indie guy, and there were a few of us, there weren't many of us there, but the few of us that were there, we all had the same exact experience. So it didn't matter what I was doing or what I had.
yeah,
They
yeah.
were just walking right by us because that was not what they were there for. I'm going, okay, this is not my show.
Yeah, that's the thing around here is like we have some like, and I guess I should for the audience, and they've heard me talk about this a few times. So, in case you missed those other episodes, I'll redefine show. So there are larger shows or Comic Cons that I've been to, like the Phoenix Comic Con. I would not start out there. I would start at my local shows. So we have like a Comic Con at Ithaca College. It's um kitty corner in terms of our town to Cornell University. It's ran by students. It's like $55 for a table. But the amount of people that go through there, it's not overwhelming, but they get like a good selection. And it's very varied with people from the local community that, like there's comics, there's novels, there's toys, like all sorts of stuff. And it's really nice. It's kind of like a geek flea market more than a Comic Con. And I kind of like that, if that makes sense. So those are the kind of shows, when I say
That's
shows
cool.
to you guys, that I'm talking about. Like I want to go to. There's two others around here that are getting a little bit bigger, but are very similar. And there's like I told my friend, I go, those are like the shows that I really want to go to, because those are the shows where, people are looking for different, and it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that, if that makes sense. I've been to a couple where it was like where my mother-in-law lives in Saratoga Springs. There's a massive Comic Con. It's great if you're looking for Marvel, DC, Star Wars, but there's when I go and I look for people like you, and I want to go talk to creators or authors or even companies, there's only like maybe 10 out of like 1,000 booths, or tables or whatever. And it's kind of, it's big, it's fun, but to buy stuff, but it's I go there to buy stuff. I don't go there, I can't go there to go and interact with people, if that makes sense.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that, like, for me, like I wouldn't go and pay for a booth there as an indie author, just personally, like, great con, like Virgo Sell Comics and stuff or whatever. But it's just different. Like for you, I wouldn't recommend going to that one. I talked to some indie authors that we talked about maybe going there and trying to, collaborate forces or something at some point just for fun, and just do the same two tables and cover the costs and just throw,
Good idea.
some merch out and just have a good time and just like kind of hang out. And I was like, well, my mother-in-law lives there, so we
Those are
would
the
have to
best
get a hotel.
ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we might do that, but we have to kind of tweak on how that show is. So,
Yeah.
but I do think it's interesting. Yeah, like there's all sorts of different levels to shows or cons, or we have different festivals and stuff. You can go get a table for 65, $75 for a weekend, and then pop
That's
yourself down.
worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So those are the kind that I'm looking at, not maybe the bigger Comic Cons or something like that, at
I need
least
to
for now.
find more of that around here. There's got to be. I mean, I'm in Portland, Oregon. It's like there's
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we get a couple of big shows, but it's like, well, where are the small ones? There's like a small one down in Salem in like
Oh, yeah, yeah,
March,
yeah.
but I'm probably too late to get into that one for next year because it's like March, I think, for this year. And then there's one down in Medford toward the end of the year, which is kind of the southern end of the state. But that was a good one. I've been to that one before. That was a good show, the Medford show. I think there's some stuff up in Lower Washington. Like I went to Tacoma one time. I did Emerald City once, and that was like
Oh, cool.
that's what you're talking about, where you just drowned.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you're
I
drowned by
heard.
the big
Yeah.
guys. It's like forget
Yep.
it. You can't buy attention at a show like that. But I mean, it's cool to be there. It's fun,
Yeah, I heard it
but
was fun, but not so much for sales.
no, yeah.
Repeatedly. Yeah.
When I went to Tacoma. Tacoma has a big show, and I went there. Is it Grit City? I went there like the year after COVID. I think that was like 2021, probably right before you and I had our first
I
thing.
think so. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I had gone to that show right about that time. In fact, actually, it would have been like right around the time you and I talked. In fact, and I went to that show, and I went with a couple other guys that are small indie guys doing stuff like me, and we were all there together, and which is the best way to do a show, honestly, because you kind of have some support for each other and backup for each other, which is a great way to do it. But none of us could get any attention at that particular show right after COVID. Like we found that like everybody was there, they were only looking for manga, and it was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
man, I don't have any of my, I've got like this manga project kind of like backloaded my stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a really neat manga thing. But I'm like, but I don't have that. And I'm like, but I have my other stuff that like people have liked and that have succeeded on Kickstarter or whatever. But like, none of us, our stuff that has sold, we've all had stuff that has sold. We couldn't buy attention that
Yeah.
show. It was just like, man, that was just like, but that was then. I've heard that it's changed now. People are opening back up and looking again for more stuff and things. It's like, although manga is now bigger, and I'm like, well, it should be. I mean, I think it's deserving of a good audience. It's good stuff. I enjoy a lot of it, but in fact, my steampunk thing, it's like there's just borders on the element. It's like I could almost twist it just a little bit and make it manga,
Yeah.
if I wanted to. It's like right on the border, kind of thing. But yeah, so it's like now I'm like going, okay, so that was probably the last time I really did shows. Because after that I went into like my surgeries and my health problems for a couple of years. And it's
Yeah.
like now I'm kind of going, now I want to start doing shows, but I want to see this year what I can get out, what I can produce. Because I've got all the stuff that's kind of like done that I'm like, I just have been sitting on now for a couple of years. And I'm like, well, let me put it out. Let me
Yeah.
put out all the stuff that I've created and developed and completed. It's like, let me get that out. And I've got stuff that I've still got in works in the process. It's like, I mean, I've got the steampunk book that I've started. The second issue of that is already, well underway. I've got a book that I put out on Kickstarter. That I did with a bunch of other creators. We got together and I pulled in their characters and let's do this special thing that's kind of Halloween themed. And because I found a bunch of guys with pumpkin head characters, I'm like, let's do this thing for Halloween. They were like, yeah, yeah, this is great. So we did it, and it was great. It succeeded, and we were late because we had to rotate artists on the thing. But we got it out, and it came out, and people loved it. And so we've got the second one of that just about ready, and that's like in progress. And we want to do the Kickstarter for that. That's probably going to happen right after I do the steampunk one. I'm going to be focusing on that one and hopefully get that one out for Halloween this year. But then I've got the third issue of Spies Among Us. I'm up to the third issue on that, and a companion book for that that's underway. That's like part of that story, but from a different angle. Because that's a big story, that Spies Among Us. So I've got like all of these things. Plus, like I said, I've got the manga thing. It's got like right behind all of that stuff. That's kind of like right on the edge. I got all those things going on. Plus, I'm working on the second book in the fantasy series, which it's just sitting there. Fantasy series, Lost Clans of Lydania. It's the Lydania series, the books of the lore of Lydania. I did the first book, got the second book like halfway through. Had an artist. She's fantastic. She's in Romania, and she did the covers for me for the first book and the second book, and then she stopped doing covers for a while. She had a kid, and so she
Oh
kind
yeah.
of took some time off. And I'm like, ooh, I really don't want to do this without having her do the third cover. Well, she just came back at the end of the year last year and said she's ready to do covers again. So I have now, tapped her for doing the third cover. And I'm like, having that third cover, I feel like it's going to motivate me to finish the
Yeah.
rest of the second book. Now that I know I've got her for that last cover, so that I've got what I wanted, which is all three covers by the same artist, because she's really amazing to work with. And so I'm like, okay, now I can finish this book. It's like maybe that was the thing holding me up. I don't know, but it's like that's coming. And then I've got another book that's like I'm co-writing with my girlfriend. She does like cozy mystery, and this one's kind of a cozy mystery
Oh,
that's like it's a mystery book. It's cozy, but not it's not conventional. I don't want to spoil that or go into that too far, but that one's ready to go. That one's like not ready to go, but it's like it's moving. It's quite. So I'm just sitting on all the stuff that I'm like
yeah.
now is the time for me to get busy. It's like so I'm a busy guy for not like I'm the busiest unemployed guy I've ever known. It's like
I'm
yeah,
so
hopefully
sorry,
some
Alan.
of this pays up.
Just 1 sec. I'm just gonna have to pause this just for a second.
Mhm.
I just got.
And Alan, so one of the interesting things that I thought, and in terms of, like even like years ago, now it's like 4 years, like I said earlier, in terms of the last time, we chatted on here, like I said, in my first interview, but I just thought like you were the perfect person, which kind of leads us into that little segue here for our next question, in terms of, I just thought your comic, SPIs Among Us just sounded really cool. And the art, of course, was just, really classic and like my style. So I was just curious if you could just remind our audience again. And like I said, guys, don't forget, you can always go back and you can look at season 1, episode 1 of this podcast, Alin Silverwood interview, and check it out. Back when I was talking to Alan, in terms of, I think it was issue 2 for SBIs Among Us. But just for our audience who are, might be new and not seen that interview, what was that comic about and how'd you come up with that idea? It was so cool.
Well, for Spies Among Us, what I did was I had this concept of these certain characters, and I kind of thought of them as like really rough-hewn superheroes. But I didn't want to call them superheroes, so I called them super-powered individuals, which came out with the is it anagram of spies without the even spies, SPI with the spies among us. And that's like, oh yeah. Now the reason that it's called Spies Among Us is because they unlike, you get some stories where it's like, okay, all of a sudden, what would the world be like if superheroes suddenly manifested? It's like, I'm like, this isn't a world where they just suddenly manifested. This is a world where they've existed among us in secret. Um, even in ancient times, it's like, people talk about, your Greek gods in the world of Spies Among Us. Those guys were spies. They were superpowered individuals, is what they were. And so you knew about them publicly, but they were thought of as something else. But in modern times, they were kept secret by a man named Dr. Anonymous, a mysterious guy with this incredible power that I'm like, this is really a neat power that I've never even heard of before. But his
Yeah.
power is what kept them secret. And then he disappears and they're exposed. And what is called the exposure event. So there's all of these superpowered individuals running around. They're forming factions. The public is up, in an uproar. Like, what is this? Where are these guys coming from? What's happening? It's chaos. And I'm like, I want to throw people right in the middle of that chaos. And then, like, start focusing on some of these guys and what is happening. And there's a group that coalesces into what I'm calling, informally calling, the investigators. And they're the group that wants to find, different groups have different people have different goals for this new world where they can be publicly active. And this group is kind of like, maybe we can find Dr. Knows what happened to him. Was it foul play? What happened? Where is he? What was it he was doing? What is his power? Because nobody really understands. It's like a big event would happen and it would expose superpowered individuals to the public, but he would show up and he would make that kind of all unhappen. And like, no matter what happened, destruction, death, whatever, it would all unhappen. And the only people who would remember it would be the superpowered individuals. Public, it goes away. If it was recorded, on the news or whatever, that all vanished. It's like, how does one man literally unmake all of this stuff? Every time this happens, he shows up and keeps them hidden. It's like, how is this guy doing it? So nobody knows what his power is. Nobody knows where he is, what's happened to him. So they're out to find him. They're trying to figure out what he could have been doing, who he could have been. They go to a couple of different people who had powers. It's like, well, was it a mind manipulation thing, or was it like some kind of tech manipulation thing? So they talked to a couple of guys like that are part of the deal. And in the meantime, there's all of this stuff kind of swirling around them. They get attacked by some of the factions that are trying to jockey for, now we can use power. Plus, we expose the fact that even though the public didn't know about them, the government, of course, did. And then we find out where they've been keeping spies if they had to apprehend them, and what their plan is now that they're out in public. They have a plan. And there's a group that is working for the government of spies, trying to figure that out. So there's all this kind of thing happening, but the main line is going to be leading to Dr. Anonymous and what he is through this chaos and these certain characters and how they find him and what the actual revelation is, which is mind blowing what he's been doing. And I've since, one of the things that I started to do from the beginning with this whole thing was I had looked at these public domain characters and I started kind of thinking, some of these guys are neat. And, a lot of guys are trying to let's do a new version of that guy. It's public domain now. Let's do a new version of him. And I'm like, I kind of like a little bit of that. But what I like is the idea of pulling some of those guys and doing mashups of some of those public domain guys. And I'm like, that's going to be a thing. These public domain mashups that I've created, which have been pretty interesting. People like them. I'm like, they're a whole faction that is going to come into this story, that are going to play into this story. And I'm going to do them. I'm going to do a book that introduces them, kind of like just like a one-off, at least to start, as a separate piece. That will be another clue, a big clue about Dr. Anonymous. It has to do with something to do with his power. And it's like, he's kind of like, for the spies in our world, he's been kind of a hero in protecting them and keeping them from, public animosity and whatever. But there are places where maybe he's not seen so favorably. Maybe he's the opposite, of a hero. And that's kind of the point of all of that. But it's definitely a wild ride and a lot of great characters in there. Some fun stuff. And I've had some fantastic art, like you mentioned. I've had some fantastic artists to work with on this that have done some stuff. And some of my covers have been.
I would say the covers have been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'm getting some great stuff. Yeah, on those. So that's kind of that's always been kind of my exciting superhero thing that I wanted to do. I've had that for years. And what else? So that was one of my comic properties that I was like, that I have to do. And then I had the steampunk thing that I started developing. It kind of was at the back of my mind, like, I don't know, a dozen years ago or more, 12 to 15 years ago, it started happening. and it just sort of kind of came together, and it became Sky Guy and the Altitude Adjusters. Um, I don't know where I got the idea. Altitude Adjusters, kind of a play on the attitude adjustment thing. But it's like, what would an altitude adjuster be? And it's like if it's a steampunk world, it's like, so, okay, let's take floating cities, and it's like something has to keep them there. They have to stay at this particular
Right, right.
altitude. And it's like, what if they were ancient? And only altitude adjusters have this passed down knowledge that know how to maintain these cities. And so they have this kind of dangerous job where they have to kind of go under the city and do things and stuff. And they have these ships, these little like, they're almost utility, but they're kind of sleek. I call them sky sloops, and they can fly into the city and hover up there and work on the bottom of this thing. I mean, it's kind of like, think of Bespin, but not maybe that high or that weird,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but um, but they're ancient cities, and it's like there's parts of them that are deeper that like they're sealed off, and nobody even remembers. They're so old, people don't even remember how they got up there or why.
Oh, that's cool.
But people are living in them, and this guy, Sky Guy, he's a pilot, and he runs this outfit. His name is Aaron Sky, and he just calls it Sky Guy and the Altitude Adjusters. That's his team. So
That's
that's the
awesome.
name. That's the name of his actual maintenance team. And they're down working one day, and somebody sabotages. They have like there's like 12 turbines, and it's like, think of a clock. This is the steampunk play, and think there's 12 turbines around the rim of this floating city that have to be kept up, and these are massive. These turbines are like the size of several city blocks, and you can open up the center, and there's all this gear work in there, and it's all powered by induction of the the moisture in the atmosphere is inducted, and
Oh, that's cool.
then it goes through, and it's processed, and the steam is pushed out, and it turns the turbine. I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
this. I've
awesome.
literally got this. Yeah, there's a schematic, and in the Kickstarter campaign, I have a schematic that's going to
Oh,
be a
that's
mini
cool.
poster that shows just kind of a little bit. It's like really basic, but there's it's got that steampunk thing, and I was like, I'm trying to keep true to that, but it's like a lot of gear punk and stuff. But so um, anyway, so there's somebody basically turns on. They have this one they're working on turned off because it's like it's huge, and it's like if you're going to be there working, you could they can do induction, or they can be you know the turbine can either pull air in or it can push air out. Pulls air in and you're there. It's like boom, you know you're sushi. And if it pushes you down and knocks you off, which is what happens. Somebody pushes it into output instead of being off, and it blows Sky Guy off, and they catch him, and it's like, and then it causes a problem for the Aerotown because they were working on it. So the whole town basically, it's like an earthquake. Um, but the result is that like, oh, their license is suspended temporarily until they can figure out what happened. And it's like he did everything right. He's like, what did I do wrong? I turned in my paperwork, everything. I didn't forget to turn in my paperwork. Did you turn in your paperwork? I turned in my paperwork. So it's like, okay, so whatever. So like until they can figure out who did this, they're basically like, now what are we gonna do? We've got to make a living in the meantime, and we've got to figure out who did this to us. And a couple of other things happen along the way in to kind of trying to decide what happens. First off, one of their team is injured severely, and he's the guy he's like their tech guy. He's the guy who basically can create anything. And really, he's kind of an odd guy because and this is Loris, he doesn't really relate to people as well as he does to machinery. You put a bunch of gizmos in front of him and he can make something. He can sit there and do that. But you put him in a room with people and he's a little awkward. Um, maybe a subtle autism kind of a thing, maybe going on. But he's also created Tom, the automaton, which is this little, this little robot. He's supposed to do certain functions, but he's kind of transcended that. He's taken up this. Tom is kind of becoming like he is. It's not like Pinocchio. It's not like he wants to be a real boy. And it's just he just has this kind of like tendency to be protective or clingy to Loris, his creator, and he's doing things that are not within his,
Mm.
you know, his whatever mechanized, not programming, but his mechanized, parameters. He's working outside of the parameters. So there's like something going on with this robot that Loris built, this automaton. And then there's Loris's sister Serena, who is her skill is, whereas Loris can do all these other gadgets, Serena is specifically weaponry. She can build weaponry, and she's just built this thing that she's got, that uses something new. It's not like anything that anybody seems to really know about. What it is it's gathering static electricity, and she can fire.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's basically it shoots lightning bolts.
That's awesome.
She's like, she's like, oh, there's like this scene in the first issue where she like fires it. She's pissed off because her sidekick basically tried to get her a deal with pirates to sell this to pirates, sell technology, because there's pirates, and they're like, they hear about this from this guy that she uses as kind of a go-between to sell stuff. And she wasn't ready to have this one revealed, so she's pissed. So she kind of fires it over his head, and it's like, and it works. It blows the side of a wall out. And she's like, I don't think pirates should have this, And it's kind of like, wow, okay. And she's calling it the Thunder Bluster, which sounds very steampunk.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome.
So she's developed this thing, but Loris gets hurt in the beginning, and he loses an arm. And in the course of the issue, he comes back, and it's like there's this other arm he was working on. He was actually thinking about upgrading Tom, but he winds up thinking, now I need an arm. And he thinks in his mind it's an upgrade to put on a mechanical arm. It's an upgrade for him. It's like for most of us, we'd be like, I'd really like to have my real arm back. But he's like, gee, I can upgrade now. So he winds up putting it on himself. Let's see, Loris, there is one of the things is each of these characters have really interesting character aspects too. Like Serena, she does do some kind of shady stuff. She does kind of like work with the pirates a little bit, but she's still good. She's not, partly it's through her efforts the pirates don't attack that Arrow Town. They leave it alone because she's there, and that she has done some things to help them occasionally. What that says about what happens in other Arrow Towns is we don't know yet. Now Sky Guy, he's an expert pilot. Think about him as, imagine you're a pilot, but you have the phobia, you have a fear of heights. So it's like for him every day doing his job, which involves flying and being high up above. I mean, this thing is way above the surface of the planet, of the world.
Yeah.
They're way up in the sky, and it's like, so every day he's facing his greatest fear, to do his thing, but he's very, very good at it. So it's like, imagine being good at the one thing that you're afraid of doing. So it's kind of like, so he's constantly always like, he's like on edge. He's like, I'm fine. It's kind of like he has that attitude, like, I'm okay, I'm fine. And they're like, yeah, sure you are. But then there's Marbury, who's from the ground. Now the people, the beings who live on the surface of the planet do not look human like you and I. They are mutants, mutated. So Marbury's like this big orange guy with the horns, and he's got like an extra thumb on each hand, and he's big. But he's also like, he's very literate. He would rather read a book and listen to classical music. But he's the brute, he's kind of impenetrable, but he is an old friend of Sky Guy, as you can tell. And in the second issue, we'll find out where that friendship originated, and it's a revelation. There's a lot of revelations that come along through this thing. The whole story is basically, it's like, it's going to be like peeling an onion. It's like, it's opening up all the truth about why this world is the way it is, and everything. And where it's going. Which is a really cool. It's a great story. I'm like, I can't believe how much I believe in this story. It's like, as someone who doubts all of your own stuff, it's like, this is really this is the story everybody's gonna like. This is a great story if I can get people to find it, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but but yeah, and it's fun. The characters are great. You know, Marbury has this character. He's this kind of dry sense of humor, um, which you see in there. So there's humor, there's heart, and there's hope. I mean, the thing is, the story is kind of a story of hope. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. I mean, obviously, there's pirates that can get involved in there. Um, some other things I don't want to kind of give away too much, but yeah, but ultimately, this is a story of hope um, about the world, and we're going to tell it in a fun way, and the adventure is just going to ratchet up. You know, the first issue is kind of like here's the setup,
Yep.
here's the characters, here's your main team and the setup and everything, and that leads to everything. Everything it follows is going to be discoveries that unravel things that it's like you didn't even know. These guys are just going on about their daily business. There's this sabotage thing, and then the next thing is like each step they take opens up something new that is like what is that? And and they just have to keep following it, and as they do, it turns everything upside down and wrong side out. Um, and and it's a fascinating journey. Um, and like I said, it's heart and it's hope and and it's it's I'm losing my words here. I lose my words. I do that now. Anyway, so yeah, and I put together the Kickstarter. I actually sat on the book. I got Ryan Best, who's this fantastic artist. Especially, I mean, and look at the book, look at the art. His art is fantastic. He does great stuff. He just did the cover C, which is like this kind of a schematic of Tom, which is like
Oh,
this
that's cool.
really really cool cover. It's such a neat like visual of Tom, and it's like, and that's really kind of important because it's like, what are the things that are happening and changing? Like why are they all so good at what they do? There's a reason for that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah, there is. It's it's got
Well,
to get.
I'm curious, like in terms. So I'm always curious when it comes to like steampunk. In terms of well, like usually two things in particular, which I always find kind of like the most interesting. One, I'm kind of curious at like so like what technology, like how did you decide kind of like what were some of like the technological advancements they would have, but then how did you kind of apply those to steampunk? Because I feel like the tech is such an like an integrated process in terms of the genre. So like just like if people just click on the description, which I highly recommend for the Kickstarter itself, you can actually just literally see from really like the first like section, right? Like they're already like flying around and stuff. So I'm just curious, like what were like the factors in terms of deciding like the tech they did have, and then in terms of what did it do, and how did you make it steampunky, as one of my friends likes to say.
Yeah,
But I'm always interested, in like what the tech is that you decided to, put in there, and then, how did you kind of apply that into, you mentioned a little bit already in terms of the cities and, kind of how they're getting around. But I'm just curious if there was other tech, that, you integrated, and changed in terms of, like the society itself. I always think that's just fascinating in terms of the world building for steampunk.
I think you mentioned the trailer. You've got go see the trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer, go look at the trailer. It's fantastic. It's really fun. And it's just a good little teaser trailer.
Yeah.
Um, and it shows a little bit. Plus, the campaign has good stuff. I'll get into that. But the thing about the tech and stuff, it's like this. I had this concept. It had to involve the floating cities. I'm like that. I need that trope, and I'm like, I want what in my mind what I needed it to be. And like, I was like, what are the things that are kind of steampunk? It's like, oh, if I put the turbines if I do 12 of them around the city like a clock, then it's like you just kind of like take that kind of like clock um, arrangement. I'm like that's kind of thing, and it's run by steam and gears. And how does that work? And I'm like, I kind of like figured that out. And it's like, and I put a whole city in there, and I like literally, this in the schematic, you'll see I literally kind of like there's neighborhoods, there's places. And then I started thinking about, well, there's going to be ships, obviously. I haven't really done the pirate ships or the big ships, but the sky sloops, I was like, it's like just focusing on my team, my characters. The direct thing I needed was, what do they do? What do they use? And I'm like, they should have something that's cool, cool vehicle, but also utilitarian. I'm like, how do I cross the Batmobile with a pickup truck
Oh, that's awesome.
and use steampunk aspects? So I did some, looking around and stuff, and I kind of looked at like, steampunk ships. They all look like blimps and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, these don't look like blimps. That's not going to work. But
Yeah,
they
yeah.
could have these little like, so they've got these little side things that like basically your storage containers, and they have propellers on the back end of them. But then the rest of the ship, kind of like it has like a flat bed in the back with like a fin, and these flip up lanterns, for light for working at night. They can hover. They're flat on the bottom because they have their own little turbines, which are like the ones that run the city, but they're on the bottom.
Oh, that's cool.
But and they have induction. The front thing where it would be headlights is actually induction turbines to pull in. Everything is about taking humidity out of the air.
Hmm.
Using air humidity. If you don't have a direct water source, you can pull air in and then condense. The condensation can be used. And what you don't see, and what is basically going to be a part of the story, is that somewhere back at the time they developed these aerotowns, whoever did developed a compressed heat source to heat to create the heat, the steam, some kind of a compressed heating source. And they can still, run those, use those, reuse them, or even create them. I don't know yet, but that's not really as important. It's just that's the thing. But anyway, so and I wanted these things to have kind of this cool aesthetic. So I was looking at like Art Deco era,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
cars, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what
that's
you've got
smart.
in Sky Guys, in the white one. That's what you've got there. It's kind of like that, and then like you've got this. So you've got that whole kind of Art Deco meets steampunk meets utilitarian, but so that's it. So I gave them these things. And then when it came to the automaton, I'm like, how am I going to make Tom look? And I actually have one of the things that I want to show people in this thing. I've done it as a stretch goal, is a behind the scenes thing which shows some of the preliminary, because I have had several artists. I mean, I don't know. I know. If I try to count, is it like maybe it's close to 10 guys over the period from the time that I conceived of this until I got to Ryan. I've had several guys do versions of what I was trying to get to. So there's like kind of the evolution of what became Tom. You can see
Oh,
like
that's
early
cool.
versions of all of them, like what they first looked like originally to what they look like now, as they've kind of, evolved. So I want to show all of that, because it's kind of interesting, especially with Tom, because Tom was like, what do I need him to be? It's like,
Yeah.
because he's going to be a thing. What I had kind of thought, the running joke for Tom is that Tom is always going to get banged up or damaged, which he does in the first issue. He gets a couple of bangs and dings. And I'm like, Loris would always be upgrading him. So it's like, he would be kind of like, it's like, okay, so every time Tom gets damaged or injured, Loris upgrades him. So he'll constantly be changing. It's like I just from the evolution of building him, it's like I started thinking about that as an idea. It's like, oh, what if that's just like the running joke, is that he's constantly a little bit different as we go. It's like physically he's changing as well as performance wise he's changing. It's like, let's do it with a visual cue, which I thought would be kind of a neat thing. Now I'm not so sure how much he's going to visually change. Maybe not quite as much, but a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, Would be different things. Like he starts out short, I might like have him get taller.
That's cool.
Like Loris might give him longer legs. Like stuff. But we'll see. I actually had some thoughts about Tom today. That's like, okay, yeah, that's something I hadn't thought about, but that actually works. There's some neat like I was talking about, like those heating, the compressed heating sources. It's like Loris would have modified and created one all of his own strictly to put in Tom. So Tom has this unique and incredible, source. And it's like that makes him kind of a valuable thing if anybody knew about it.
Mm.
So there's all these things about them that like kind of make them like targets for things. And the pirates, there are pirates in the world, and they're called the Seven Devils, and that's because there's a consortium of seven pirates that have kind of what's it called? Like if you think in Pirates of the Caribbean where they have that thing where they
Yeah, yeah,
parlay
yeah.
and it's all them. It's like there is kind of a thing among them, but it's shaky. It's shaky and it may not hold. But one of them is named Python John, and he's actually the thing about I started mentioning the surface people, the mutants. They're called groundlings. I thought that people might consider calling them something like that, but then there's a derogatory term because they're kind of looked down. They're a little bit more primitive, or some of them tend to be, and people who live in the air towns are like kind of like they have like maybe a little commerce with them, but they're not. There's not a lot of love for them, but so they call them ground monsters. Is one of the things that they'll call them, which is a very derogatory term, very offensive to the surface dwellers, Um, but like some of the at least one of the pirates, Python John, who's a guy who's got like he's got like snake arms kind of a thing, but he's kind of bad. It's actually really neat if you look at the visual. He's kind of a weird looking cat, but he's one of the badass pirates. And there's Scarlet Charlotte, who is just a bloody mean pirate. Yes. And her relationship to the team is something that will be revealed. A little interesting, quite interesting. Um, um, but where was I going? Okay, so I was talking about the pirates, the technology and stuff. Kind of lost my train of thought there.
I just thought it was cool when you're talking about, the pirates and like their factions and
Yeah.
just in general. I think that that's really neat. And just like the different ones that you have, because when I think of uh I'm not going to talk about he that shall not be named now on here. But there's certain, um steampunkish, books that I liked that had, the pirates in it and like sky pirates and stuff. And I
Sure.
just, I don't know. I in one of the movies, let's say, like where De Niro plays one of the sky pirates, I was just like, oh, I just loved like the myriad of personalities. But I always think, I don't know, I guess like, and like even like Treasure Planet, like thinking of like the pirates and stuff. So for me, like when when you're talking, you're like, yeah, I got pirates, like sky pirates. I'm always like, okay, so like, because I don't know, like all my favorite steampunkish, whether like just stories, I guess, right? Like whether they're comics or video games or movies or whatever, they have the interesting personality, with some sort of pirates or criminals or
Murdered by
rogues.
Pirates is good.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just like
Pirates are always fun. They're always great, and
just
they're a
fun,
big
yeah.
trope. They're a big
Yep.
trope of the steampunk thing, and it's like
Yeah.
I was like instantly, I'm like, I knew that if I have these air towns, there's gotta be pirate raiders. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
whether or not I
that's fair.
planned to put the trope in, it was
Yep.
gonna be there. Like a lot of this thing kind of I didn't push it out, it came to me. It's like it developed itself. The characters got up and walked around in my head and told me who they were. This is the kind of thing that it is. And they still do. They're still giving me new bits of information. Um, Even though I know the whole story arc and everything and where this goes, um, which is great. It's a great place. Like I said, it's a story of hope, really. It's amazing that the different characters that I've begun to develop have each one of them will get up and tell me who they are, you know, It's like I don't have to create them; they create themselves, And that's pretty amazing. I'm like, that's why this is such a good book. This is so good. This is going to be such a great story. I mean, it's like if I can just get people to find it. And I was like, I've got to save this. I can't. I don't know what that was. Somebody shooting at me through the window. Pirates. Can't talk about the pirates anymore. Anyway, so
You talk too much about the pirates right now. They're coming at you.
yeah, I'm summoning them. Told you they're telling me who they are. Um, no, so I kind of, I completed the book, the first issue. Like it's been like a couple of years. Now I've had all these health things that they've held up all of my projects for a couple of years. I haven't released as much stuff or anything. And I'm like, okay. So what I want is when I release this book, I want to do it right. I really want to do it right. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it right. I finally get to the point where I'm like, maybe I'm waiting too long. I need to put this out. So I'm putting it out. But I'm like, I put a lot of work into like, what can I have? And I got, did I show you, was I showing you this? I made had these really
Oh,
nice,
that's cool.
yeah, it's really nice. They're
It's cool
metal. They're
logo.
like solid
Oh, awesome.
bookmarks I mean, it was the son of a landlord of mine who did the logo originally
Oh,
several
that's
years
cool.
ago, like back in 2014, I think 2015. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do these because I was told that having something metal in the campaign would be good. Like great. And then I got hooked up with the guy who does action figures, and I'm like, man, that's the dream is to have an action figure.
Yeah, yeah,
So there's an action figure, and then that's limited. So it's like if you want one of those, you got to get in. And they're really reasonably priced, and they're cool. It's just a very simple, 5 points of articulation. But he's gonna have a gun, and I show that in there. So I put that in. I've got that in there. And I did this whole schematic. I'm like, I got to explain the aerotowns. I'd like to do more for the rest of the things because there's the Thunder Bluster, and then there's Sky Guy's gun, which has its own special thing. The Sky Sloops, Tom. I mean, I could do schematics for all these guys. And of course, it's all bogus science. I developed it in my own lab, so we know that we know how much that means. You
yeah.
know. Um, so yeah, so I did that schematic thing, and then I'm like, okay, people have liked doing cameos in the Kickstarters I've done in the past. I'm like, how cool would it be, like, you get to be a pirate or a groundling, you know, some kind of one or the other in a future issue, in the next
That's
issue
cool.
actually, because I've saved room for this.
Oh, that's
So I'm
awesome.
like, so I'm doing that. But yeah, I'm like, I just wanted to kind of get that in there, do some nice covers and get the stories. Do it. I've got a really good story with a really good artist, and I'm like, this is the thing. This is the thing that's special. It's like if people read this, they'll love it. Period. I mean, it's like, and I'm not the guy who's confident about everything. I'm always kind of like going, is that really good enough? Did I do a good job? And I'm like, this thing, this is it. This thing is like the thing that everything I like everything I've done, but this is the thing that I think I can say most, I feel most confident about people loving.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, 'Cause it's just a lot of fun, and it's the kind of fun that people really enjoy in general, and it's a good time for it, I think, too. So out it comes. It's on Kickstarter right now. By the time you run this, it'll still be on Kickstarter. We've been up for about tomorrow. We'll have only been up for a week. It's still got about 30 days left to go because I gave it a few extra days because I wanted to get on there and kind of like get around, start playing with stuff. Um, but we're like, I think we're about like halfway to goal at this point after about the first week. But that 30 days goes by fast, and you know how things go with
Yep.
Kickstarters. It's
Yep.
like you get that lull, and you're like
Yep.
going, oh, so you get a bang every day, bang out some kind of like thing. I'm going to put up some ads and stuff. So I'm like trying to get the word out. It's really just a matter of like, look at it, get somebody to look at that. If they watch that trailer, it's like, it's irresistible, you know?
Oh, I didn't even think of that. I was gonna say, yeah, send me the trailer again too, because I'll just put like I did for Spies Among Us. I'll put the trailer up on the channel as well. Um, maybe for the audio, I'll do something talking about it, and then put the link. I'll probably do like put the link for the trailer for the audio, but I totally forgot to ask you about that earlier. But yeah, we could totally do that again because that was like one of my biggest things was for issue 2 for Spies Among Us was I mean like I had quite a few people check that out, so that was really cool. People love trailers for stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
I know
it's
I
kind
do,
of like
but
you must do them now. And it's like, and I don't know
yeah.
how to do them. So I had to get a guy to do it for me. And he did a good job. He knew what he was doing. And I got a guy to do some music for it. So it's got a little soundtrack that fits really well. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna have
Definitely
to do
not
one.
easy.
I've got the third, and I've got the third issue of Spies Among Us to do too. It's another one that's been sitting there. It's like it's all drawn and everything, and I just need to do it and put it on Kickstarter. I need to do up the Kickstarter campaign. So it's like, okay, so I'm going to finish this. I've also got Infinite Souls, which is the thing that I did with a bunch of other creators. We each took a character or two of our own and put them together in this kind of supernatural superhero adventure. We did the first one, and I was late getting that one shipped. That one shipped late, but that was again during the middle of my health crises, my multiple
Well,
health crises.
I say I'm still waiting on a game from the pandemic that I backed. Like they've been, I mean, it is what it is,
Oh,
you
I've
know.
had
Like,
things. Yeah, I've
yeah,
had things that
yep,
I've just never got,
yeah,
for
yeah,
real.
yeah, yep,
And it's
yep,
like, well, okay,
yep,
but it's like I delivered it, and so I'm like, oh, so I've delivered everything I've done,
yep.
just and only one of them was late. Most of my things are usually done before I even put them on Kickstarter. Like Sky Guy, it's done. It's like it's ready to ship. It's just the only thing that'll be done is like I like to do the last page. I like to do a thank you, to my backers and put them in there.
Oh
So I
yeah,
have to have that done and then send it to the printer. And then of course there's like, making the the add-ons and stuff if I'm gonna have those
yep.
made. But that's all set up. I know how that is, and that time is built in. Um, but like with spies, I got to put that together and do that one. Got to do a thing for that. But Infinite Souls, and I've got, I'm also working on the novel because that got hung up. The second novel in the Lydania series. I've just gotten the artist back. She had stopped doing covers for a while, the cover
Mm.
artist for my novels, and she did a fantastic job on my covers.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, I've got to get that second book out, but she's ready to work on the third cover because she started doing covers again now. And I'm like, yes, that's what I needed. That's what I was waiting for. Because now
Yeah, yeah.
all three books will have a cover by this artist. And I'm
Oh,
like,
cool.
yes. So that's going to be cool. But that's the Lost Plans of Lydania, the Lost Weaponsmiths of Lydania, and the Lost Lore of Lydania, the Lydania series. And the first book was, it met really well with people, but it's like people thought, it's been so long since I put it out because I got hung up on the second one with all my health and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
People don't think I'm going to finish the series. I am. Not only that,
Well,
but I've got like two or three other things that are like right up there too. So it's like, so I'm doing books as well as my comic stuff.
what is the nice thing
Um,
about indie, right? Is like even though, like I know you had like the, like book one cover, done and everything, but like still like that's the benefit, right? Is that you could just do, like come on the podcast again or do some others or you know what I mean? Like I mean that's just the I just think it's just the benefit of indie is like people ask me all the time, like that's like Kickstarter, just for instance. Like I've said before on here, like I'm doing like my prequel novellas. And then I'm going to use the Kickstarter, and I don't really because I'll have everything else like done essentially, like the editing, everything for all three novellas. But I talked to a couple just absolutely phenomenal artists. I don't want to say their names, in case they have other stuff go on in the future. But I did approach three of like our like really hot like fantasy or urban fantasy, like indie artists. And I'm like, hey, I have this Kickstarter. I'll tell you a year out. Like I'm really looking forward to getting the cover. So that's like I'm actually like saving the money now, just to get, like a special edition cover because I'm going to do like my own anthology, and then I'll have the cover done and then release it. So the Kickstarter is really just going to be like essentially like, just covering like that cost. I'm
That's
hoping
and
to,
that is kind of the thing for Kickstarters.
yeah,
It's like
yep,
I'm not making a profit on any of my Kickstarters.
yeah,
It's literally covering most of my expenses.
yep.
Some of it is just me eating it. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
willing to do that to get this stuff out for people, to get this to people. It's like I'll eat a little bit of it or as much as I can. And of course, now I also am unemployed. My job of 20 years, and I came back from work. I mean, I came out of work for Marvel Comics on their staff. I was a staff guy there years ago for a while. Then I was at Paramount Pictures. I worked there for a while. I worked on some cool things. And then I worked for Hot Wheels at Mattel for 20 years. And then now I'm like finding myself for the first time in, a very long time out of work. And it's like, it's really rough right now. Now I'm at this point where like, it's like, how much am I going to be able to do this stuff unless I can get it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the point of Kickstarter is to do the funding. And it's like, okay,
Yep.
but I'm like, I wanted to have my stuff done beforehand and you've got to pay for it to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yep.
I did do the Infinite Souls thing backwards, and that's kind of why it was late because it's like if something happens, then it's like you don't have your book done. You can't just ship it. You got to wait until you're well enough to get it put together. And I'm like, okay, so if I do a book again, like I did Infinite Souls, I will have to know that I will have everything lined up and ready. I mean, also I lost an artist on that book. He quit.
Oh,
It's like so I had to go and replace him. And
yep.
there were like a
Time
lot of
consuming.
things. It was like this cursed book, dealing with supernatural and dark forces and stuff. And I'm going, oh, maybe it was just cursed. But we got it together and it came out nice. But yeah, so it's like so I learned a lot about like, okay, it's like if I am gonna do this without having a finished product at hand, I can do it and make it happen and not
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
not have that happen. Also, it's just about estimating, your time and
Yep.
just having things in place and knowing that the guys you've got in place are reliable. Um, Once I have all that, that's not a problem, and I've got that now. So, but the second issue of Infinite Souls is in progress, and
Oh, cool.
that'll probably be my next Kickstarter after Sky Guy, and then we'll probably jump back to Spies, and then the companion book that I was talking about for Spies. I also have a um, manga inspired or manga adjacent book called Annihilation Zone, which I've done some work on. And I have talked to a guy who's fantastic artist for doing that. If I can round him up for that, that's another thing that I might do. But I also have Sky Guy 2 in progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm hoping to get back around to that by the end of the year. So this is the year that I'm hoping to put out like 5 Kickstarter. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, and I've only done 3 in the past, so I'm like, I'll more than double, what I've done by the end of this year. Um, but it's all good. It's all like in the right place. It's
Yeah.
just,
Now
let's
I have
hope.
to ask you, Alan, I'm just curious. Like, so because personally, like Spies Among Us, like I love superhero like fiction. I'm like real addicted to like Raptors by Jamie Castle. Like I went through all 6 really quick. Jamie Castle and CJ Balin. Love the world they built. I can't wait for them to pump out more. They can't do it quick enough. Like Jeffrey H. Haskell's Full Metal Superhero. And he has like his Wraith series that like are finished and everything. So I'm like almost done with those, but superhero fiction is really hard. I would say like steampunk, like finding a really good one nowadays too, because a lot of the market book wise, people, have shifted markets, which I get. But I'm just curious, like, if you find yourself, particularly with like Sky Guy, Altitude Adjusters, where people really love the comics, and everything, and you're able to do more. Have you thought at all about writing books, in the world as well? Like if people,
Well,
if like,
I actually, yeah, it's funny you should ask because one of the next big projects that I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure I finished Light. I have a couple of other novel projects in the works, but the next big series that I have is a steampunk series,
oh, cool.
and it's really cool. It's a really cool concept. It's basically it's kind of an alternate history slash steampunk. It's like imagine if the United States didn't come to happen. Imagine if the Revolutionary War had failed and England had stayed in control of the colonies
Yeah, yeah,
and periods of time go by and certain things that happened in history historically happened. For example, England banished slavery in its colonies by like what was it, 1808 or something, which is like a good 50 plus 60 years or something before our Civil War banished it here. So like I'm setting it, um, this story that I have is kind of like this. I mean, the concept essentially is, it's 1850. England still is in charge. There is steampunk in the world. Um, but they've never, but the United States has not expanded because it doesn't exist. There's still this nebulous land that there was never a Lewis and
That's
Clark expedition. The Spanish still own like the West Coast. And you get up to the mid 1800s, like 1849, 1850. I'm kind of thinking 1851. And somebody discovers gold on the West Coast.
mm,
Now, you know what happened when they, when they did
yeah,
discover
yeah.
gold in 1849, gold
That's
rush.
interesting.
But it's like, but now you've got this thing that happens, and it's like there's kind of this territory that may be a little bit disputed still. It doesn't belong to the United States, you know? So it's like, okay, now everybody's going to try to like jockey for that land and go there. So who can get there the fastest? Um, and what can they do about it? And you know, what factors factor in? So Lewis and Clark has never happened. The gold rush is about to happen, but it's not going to happen the way we had it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to take someone who creates. Now there was the, you know, Queen Victoria had the Crystal Palace
Mm.
at the great exhibition in London, which had happened in, what year was that?
Oh man.
Was it 18, sometime in the 1840s, I think. You know, Prince
Yeah.
Albert was the driver behind that. But I looked at that and I started looking at who was at the Great Exhibition. And I'm
Oh,
like, it's amazing the people who were there, because there was things that I'm like, I need this thing, I need this thing, and I need this thing. And it's like I looked at the Great Exhibition, who was there and what they had,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, these guys are there. These guys are there. This guy was there. This guy was there. Everything I need was there. So they could have done the people that I need to do the thing that I need, that was all right there. So coming out of that great exhibition, then I have this big event start to happen, and it's like, well, what does, you know, Queen Victoria want? She wants to get there. She wants to get to that goal. It's like, well, how are we going to get over there? You know, it's like what's the fastest way? It's like, well, you know, now the dirigible has not been invented in France at this
Yeah,
point
yeah.
in time in our history, but they've started to kind of conceive it and play with it. And I'm like, I can do something with that. And I'm like, what about a glass bottom airship
Oh, that's cool.
that is racing across the unknown wilds of
That's
unexplored
cool.
America, it's basically doing what Lewis and Clark did, but it's the gold rush. And there's of course competition from the French, the Spanish, and maybe a couple of other nations. And who's the bad guy? So that's the concept. So that
Oh,
whole
that's
thing is
awesome.
this concept, and that's my book. I shouldn't even. I don't know if I should even be saying that out loud, because I'm like, I've kept that close to the cuff, because I've
Yeah.
started writing it and I've done tons of research on it. And I'm like, this is totally going to be like alternate history, and it's like that's a lot of work. That's a lot of research. I'm like, but it's alternate history, so it doesn't have to be accurate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Yep.
can fudge a lot of things. But what I have found is that I'm able to take a lot of things from where they were and move them into where I'm trying to go in ways that make sense. And
Oh,
I'm
that's
like, I
cool.
love that. I'm loving that so many things fell into place when I had this idea. And then I went researching, and I'm like, I found so many things that fell into place for what I wanted. It's like, oh, that's amazing. I can totally use that. And that's actually a real thing. People could go look that up and go, oh, that actually happened. That was
Yeah.
actually a thing. And I'm like, yep, that's what I'm trying to do. So it's like, plus there's things that are absolute poppycock, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bollocks, complete bollocks. But that's steampunk, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny
So
because a lot of my students, like, that's like their thing. They're like, "Do you know anybody that's done this type of alternate history book?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, I don't. They ask me all the time. They're like, "Well, what if this?" I'm like, I had a friend who him and I talked about doing a book where, um, where the Native Americans in mass quantities, like did discover like iron and steel and work with them, right? Not just discover, but work with them. And then like created a different society so that when you know, the Europeans get here, they actually get their booties kicked pretty quickly. I think like Joe Lee, yeah, Joe did something pretty similar and then, brought some fantastic elements and stuff. So but I just think it's so funny that they love that. So I see alternate history or alternate historical fantasy or sci-fi or steampunk. I don't know. I see like younger generations who are telling me more and more that that's what they like. So and I love that because I love history. So I think that's just really interesting.
Geronimo is going to be in my book.
Oh well, if
Um,
you didn't add
um,
Geronimo, I'd probably be upset. So
Osceola may be in my
oh
book.
yeah,
An
yeah,
old, he's a really cool character, and he died younger than he would have in my world. So, like an
yeah.
old Osceola might be
Oh,
in
that'd
there
be
at the beginning.
cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah. There are some other interesting characters that may pop up. Of course, they weren't who they would have been.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, if you've
That's
ever
what's fun.
read the Alvin Maker books
Mm-mm,
by um, Orson Scott Card,
mm-mm.
I think it's, I think it, when I read them, it was years ago, so I don't remember them very well, but I think it's kind of steampunky. I mean,
Yeah,
Alvin
yeah. That's what my
Maker,
friend
he's a
was saying. Yeah.
maker. I mean, they're
Yep.
kind of steampunky. He uses a lot of people from history,
Oh, that's
like I think
cool.
Abe Lincoln wanders through, and I'm like, you know, that's kind of a natural thing. It's like, if you're talking about 1850s, you've got an Abe
Yeah, yeah,
Lincoln.
yeah.
It
Yep.
doesn't mean that there was a United States or anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And in fact, I think in the Alvin Maker books, we don't have a United States either, if I remember correctly. But that's not an uncommon thing to have as an alternate history thing, is where the United States
Yep.
didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting as I'm doing it and doing the research. I'm kind of looking at a few things. I'm kind of going, it might have been better if we didn't
Yeah.
win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure
There's some
quite a few
interesting.
groups,
There are some
quite a
interesting
few groups would say
things.
that. Yeah.
There are some interesting things that happened um, faster outside of the United States that were better,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
humanity. But no, it's we had to be here. There was an important reason for us to be here. I mean, who would have fought the Nazis in World War II, right?
Yeah, that's what my friend was for alternate history. Like that's where it was interesting because he did just like as a side note, which is so interesting. But like it was like he did like like colonial times, didn't have the United States, like stay with Great Britain, but then like kept going with that. Like, well, what if? And then got to World War II, actually got to World War One essentially, and there was just a bunch of stuff, right? And it, like there was like he basically made it where like the Germans were together still, right? And didn't like pull themselves out, or the Russians, like the Russian Revolution didn't happen, so there was all these
Right,
things.
right.
But then he left the interwar period, changed, but then he still had Hitler's rise, and it was like without the United States, like it was just like an interesting parallel of like what if we had not been here, like that kind of thing. And it was a very interesting like concept like he was working. I don't know if he ever even published it. I hadn't seen it anywhere, but it was just so interesting just to to think about that. But that was like his theme, is like kind of going
So,
like from start to finish. It was really interesting. So
yeah, yeah. When you do alternate history, you do start to think about those things. I mean, I came up with one of the things in this story is, you know, we tried this revolution and it failed. But let's say we get into the early 1800s, about the time of Andrew Jackson and the war. What was that? The War of 1812.
yep.
Um, so somewhere between the War of 1812 and the 1845 Mexican American War, whatever. It's like, what if there's a war in there that replaces that?
Yep.
That's actually the Civil War, because what it is a second revolution attempt. You
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool.
so you can raise some interesting characters up out of that
Yeah, yeah.
in a second revolution attempt, that fails, because it's actually, it's not the good guys. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
these are kind of like not the good guys trying to do the revolution, versus the guys that did it, that were kind of, we think of them as the good guys.
Yeah, yeah.
um, in the second revolution, it's kind of like the Confederacy. It's kind of like not necessarily the good guys. They're kind of like rebelling against England's. It's kind of like, well, what was a big thing about our Civil War? It was like ending slavery. Well, when England abolishes slavery in 1808, which is close to 1812, the southern colonies are still using slave labor. So why wouldn't that have set them off and go, no, we want to be our own country so we can keep our slavery. So it's
Yeah,
like, so you still get kind of a civil war, but what it really looks like is a second attempt at a
yeah, yeah,
revolution, a breakaway from England. Except that you've got, not just the colonies that want to stay with England, against them, but you've got England itself, going, hey, no,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So you get that, and like it's like I think Andrew Jackson. It's like I need to do a little bit more research on him, but he's not a very favorably viewed character.
Oh, I can't stand him.
He's
Yeah,
kind of
I
a he's
definitely
kind of
think
a
he should be replaced by
yeah.
Harriet Tubman on the 20.
So well, exactly. So
I
I'm kind
make
of like
change. I'll be
so
honest, I make change. I'm like, oh, I have a 20. When I do have change, I go, can I get somebody else, please? Not like everybody's
well
that much
so
better,
so I have the opportunity to take him and make him
yeah.
like Jefferson Davis. He's the bad guy. So I can make an Andrew Jackson the bad guy. But it's only in historical perspective because my story takes place several years later. So he would be in the rearview mirror a bad guy. And it's like that was the second revolution attempt, and that was, crushed,
Yeah.
And so what we have is a country where there is no slavery. And I'm like, I was trying to figure it out. I was actually talking to a friend of mine. I was like, how do I figure out how to end slavery? Because I don't want the slavery in my steampunk novel in
Oh
1850.
yeah.
And it's like, well, we didn't have the United States. So how could I justify that there's not slavery anymore? And then I realized it's like, oh, wait, if we're still a British colony, the British ended slavery in 1808. It's 1808 or 1809. They abolished slavery in their colonies. So I'm going, so it's gone. I'm like, and
Yep.
it's been gone for years by the time of my story.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, perfect. I don't have, I don't want that. I don't want that to be part of the story. I want that to be like, it's not about that. I don't want
Yeah,
that to
yeah.
be a thing. I don't want that to be an aspect of it. I want it to be like that's already been dealt with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
And
that's fair.
other things, there's other things that are being dealt with. So
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to I'm like, I wanted that. I'm like, that's so cool, actually, and it's like, I hadn't realized that until I started researching it. And I'm like, that's really cool. That actually works well for me and my
Yeah, yeah.
story. And I'm like, that's actually kind of a cool thing to know.
Yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of interesting that
Yeah.
they did that.
Yeah. But I think that's what's interesting about, just doing stuff like that in general with alternate history. So it's always really cool and really fun. Highly recommend it to the crowd when you're listening or watching. I know we're wrapping up on time here, but I just want to make sure, Alan, in case somebody's catching us late for some reason or skipping the interview, which what people do, it's okay. But they're trying to go to that last question. Just want to make sure we're really hammering home, your news updates, particularly things, with, your current Kickstarter, particularly because this is the week, where it's still running,
Yeah,
for,
yeah,
a little bit here, for
yeah.
almost a month. So I just want to make sure, we left you room for that, before we head out. That way, we can tell people again about it and where to go and things like that. And,
Yeah.
get you some views.
So yeah, okay. So I mean, Sky Guy, it's Sky Guy and the Altitude Adjusters. It's on Kickstarter. Um, you're gonna put a link there, right?
Yep, it'll
Um,
be down. It is live. I just want to keep repeating that. It is a live Kickstarter as of right now. So,
yeah,
so
I
right
believe.
now we're on like the Saturday. We're February 1st. So, you guys got some time left. Got several weeks here. So just a little under a
Only
month
until
there.
the 20th. I
Oh,
think it's the
20th. Okay,
20.
sorry, misspoke
Only
there.
until the 20th of February. And don't
20th
wait
of
to the
February.
last. Don't wait to the last minute because if there are some limited items in the thing, and it's like I don't know if they're going to go fast or not. But it is better to get in earlier. Plus, it also makes the campaign more likely to succeed to get in
Yep.
earlier. It helps us get there by getting there faster. And if we go over, it's even better because then that gets to the next issue, which when
Yep.
you finish the first issue, you're going to be waiting for the second issue. I promise you. You're going to be like, I need that second issue and I need it now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, I'll have it ready. I'm working on it. We've already got pages in. Ryan has actually already done that. I show a couple pages in the campaign of his beautiful artwork. But yeah, so it's like you'll want to get in there. and get it. And it's a beautiful book. With this kind of art, it's really good. There's several covers but that third cover is kind of, there's something special about that one. The second cover is kind of it was me trying to get kind of a riff on the old original Star Wars poster,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. I
it's
can
like
see
there's a
that.
little bit of that in that second one by Oliver De La Cruz. The first one is just basically that's the here's Sky Guy, boom, and then there's the Star Wars kind of riff, and then the last one with the Tom thing, which is kind of cerebral. It's really neat.
It's cool.
Um,
It's a cool schematic for sure.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
awesome.
but you only get that cover with print. You don't get that with a PDF.
I just want
PDF's
to point
just the
out,
first
guys,
cover.
$35 for, which I believe I read right. My contacts must be up to date, but I believe $35 for 3 prints, right? For all is
You
what
get
the
all three covers.
that's
Yeah,
I've just paid $25 for one print, or $20
yeah.
for $22, which was a great comic, like another one that I backed, but and it was great and it was awesome. I can't wait for issue 2, but to get three awesome covers, in terms of physical copies, I just want the
Hmm.
audience to know, like, that's a really great price. Just
Yeah.
saying. So
We're already hitting. I mean, we're like this close to hitting our first stretch goal, which is that schematic mini poster, which people are gonna love. And then the next, we've got some PDFs from some cool books from some of my cohorts in the field. And then I think the third stretch goal will be the behind the scenes thing, which will show the journey of all of the characters and some of the equipment, like early versions up until now, like different versions as they've grown and evolved, which is kind of neat. And I'll tell a little bit more of the story about, like,
yeah.
some of the original ideas and stuff that kind of, like, maybe didn't make the cut, but so yeah, so there's quite a bit. Plus, there's some cool stuff in there that you can also get. Spies Among Us, I put that in there as add-ons if you wanted to pick up copies of that somehow in the add-ons of PDFs or print copies with all the different covers that have been done for that, which we talked about. And that's it. I mean, you can get in on being. I mean, there's a limited edition. A limited amount of cameo appearances if you want that, which will be special. Um, there is a limited amount of um, commissions. I didn't mention commissions by Ryan Best. Ryan Best is doing commissions, and he
Oh,
will be
cool.
doing them, and you will actually get the physical commission. It's not just a
Oh,
digital
that's
commission.
awesome.
You're going to get a physical drawing from Ryan Best. So that, and he'll do whatever you want. It's not just these characters. It's like whatever you want him to do.
Oh, that's
He's
cool.
also doing a superhero book. So he does anything. He can draw anything. Believe me. But he's great with creatures, and like it's like that was one of the things I loved, I think, the most about bringing him in. It's like, because if I've got these ground mutants, and I'm like, these are going to be all kind of weird, different things, and it's like he can do that so well. So
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
yeah,
So again, like we said, you guys can find, the link right in the Kickstarter. I'll put the trailer link in there too. I'm try to put the trailer up on this channel too. So there'll be a few links in there for you guys to check that out. I look forward to it, Alan. Definitely. I'm a little upset about Kickstarter, not my app not notifying me, because I followed you like 3 weeks ago or whatever, as soon
I
as
don't
we
know,
talked about
man.
this. So
I don't know. They're
Kickstarter,
playing
guys gotta be
games.
careful with the app, man. Gotta be careful. So you can't trust the app all the time, apparently. So I'm a little miffed at the Kickstarter app right now. But I'm excited to back this one, like like Spies Among Us. So I hope that people will check it out. But I look forward to reading it myself. I'm actually going to be reviewing comics now. So I'll definitely, once I get that done, stretch goal and everything. I hope everything works out. And then, once we, get all the copies and everything, I can't wait to do that between, like issue 1 and 2. Hopefully help you out, with, the second issue for the next Kickstarter. But thank you so much again for coming on, Alan. It's great to have you back, after so long. I kept
It's
thinking, I
always
got to
fun.
get Alan back. I got to get Alan back. And I just
That's
had
kind of
so many
awesome that I
people.
didn't realize I was your first guy. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So this
Like,
is cool. So it's kind of serendipitous, I think. It's a good little check-in for us to kind of see what's going on and stuff. But
very cool.
yeah, but Alan, thank you so much. Like I said, if there's anything else I can do, I got a lot of stuff I'm gonna put up the next several days for you. So hopefully, we'll get everything
Thank
out
you
there.
so
I'll tell
much.
my peeps, Yeah, not a problem. If there's anything else I can do in the meantime, please check out the newsletter, guys. I'm going to put my newsletter in the link. You'll be able to check out Alan's Kickstarter in there. You'll be able to check out a bunch of other people for cool stuff that they got going on this month. So please, please, please,
Fun stuff.
you know, back those people, follow them. We'd love to get Alan to the projects we love on Kickstarter. That would just be really, really cool. Make my month. It would be really
Yeah,
awesome.
that'd be amazing.
Be a great little check-in for this point. Yeah, right. In terms of 4 years on the podcast. But Alan, again, my friend, you know where to find me. If you need anything at all, I'll be sending a bunch of stuff your way and we'll be chit-chatting. That way, we can get everything out, with the Kickstarter. But if there's anything else I can do, my friend, you just let me know. But other than that, I hope you have a good rest of the day. And I really look forward to, whether we talk about, issue 2 for this one or, issue 3 for Spies Among Us, like whatever it is, I, look forward to our third interview and the next project. So.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You let me know. We'll
Always,
get you back on. All right, buddy. Well, I will talk to you later. I'll message you soon on Facebook. But other than that, good luck with the Kickstarter, and I will be
thank you.
back on that when I get home. So I can't
Thank you
wait
so
to
much.
see it be successful. I'll see you later,
Appreciate it.
buddy.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Hang in there. Bye.
You too.